Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Sam from Smart ICO Investor, and today we're going to talk about Access Network. Now, this was actually brought to me by a good friend of mine, and he was really excited about showing me this. Now, one of the things that I'm extremely interested in is, how we can use the decentralized nature of the blockchain and other associated services to provide disintermediated banking services and financial services to those people who may not be able to access them because the fees are extremely high. So Access Network is that. Previously, I had done some work for a company called Ucash, and Ucash and Access Network are very similar, and that in a lot of the developing world, it's really hard to access a bank. So these types of infrastructure services are very centralized. They're very they're located in bigger cities, and so if you live in a more rural area, you may not actually be able to use them. More so, it may be very difficult to get to a bank or to acquire a loan. Or if you do acquire a loan, then the fees may be extremely high. So Access Network is an already working solution that is being used in Ghana and Senegal. So I'll get into that a little bit more here in a second, but just running through the website so you guys can see it. And let's switch over to my notes, and I'll run through why I really like Access Network. All right, so I'm just going to run through the notes. A lot of these were taken from the Access Network white paper, which I have to say, as a person who reads a lot of white papers, theirs was really good. And I'll get into the reasons later. But really, it comes down to, actually, I'll get into it now. So the reason I like the white paper so much is that I'm a big fan of decentralized communities and decentralized services. And with a lot of ICOs, which have come out in the last year or 2 years, they're working on decentralized networks, but their operational businesses are very centralized. So, if a company was to fail, the token or coin would also fail as well too. So it's extremely important that any company which wants to survive for the long term has to have a plan in place in case of a bankruptcy, or the company goes under, or the founders just don't want to continue operating the company. How will somebody else be able to take up the reins and then move onward to provide those services? So they do an extremely good job of describing this in Access Network. I had a long conversation with the founders, and they're extremely intent on building in a very decentralized network that is not required to depend on the operating company, which they have. So they want to open this up and bring it global. So let me just run through some of the stats that they have in the white paper. So in developing nations, the average adult subsists on about $80 to $120 a month, has to provide for his whole family. These are usually what are called necessity entrepreneurs, like craftsmen, farmers, street vendors, and it's hard to, like I said, access banks and other infrastructure things that we in Europe, United States, North America, in a lot of places of the world, we just take for granted because we just assume that they're there. They have good growth rate in these countries. Nigeria has an extremely high growth rate. Ghana, where Access Network is operating out of already, has a growth rate of about 4%. And they have about 37 banks, but 60% of the people remain unbanked. That's an incredibly high number. That's almost 20 million people in Ghana have no banking services. So what they actually use is small microfinance institutions, which are less trustworthy, don't have good credit ratings, may go bust or go bankrupt. Who knows? Additionally, there is mobile banking services there. However, penetration for cell phones is quite low. In Ghana, they say that the penetration is about 25%, and it may be underutilized or not even used in some areas. So some areas won't even have 4G or 3G or LTE coverage. So it makes it really difficult to, even if you have a smartphone, to be able to access these services because you have no data. So I want to take a quote directly from the white paper because it's extremely important, I think. It says, "The underserved represent a massive, diverse population with pressing economic and technological needs. Decentralized crypto systems, by their very nature, need a massive and diverse population to thrive at scale. They are each the solution to each other's problems. The only issue is access to each other." And why is this? The reason is that you can take away a lot of the overhead for what the banks do. I'm sure everybody knows that when you go and you use a credit card or you use your debit card and you overdraft, right? You get hit with these huge fees. Now, if you're making near I don't know, $100, $200 a month, and you get hit with a massive fee, it could wipe out a good portion of your savings, 20% of your savings for the month, or what you would need to subsist on. Additionally, the requirements for being able to access these services would need you to be in a major city or be in an area where you'd have consistent data coverage so that you could use your phone on a daily basis to be able to send people money if you had a smartphone. So this really limits banking services to the upper class and more wealthy people in the country and those who live in more urban areas. But this is only a small part. There's a huge amount of people that live in underserved and more rural areas of these developing countries. So the backbone of where Access Network is actually going to start is with a company called Atlas Money. And they're a P2P branchless banking platform where it allows anyone to become essentially a small microbank. And what they have are these agents who go door to door having relationship-led services where they can do deposits, withdrawals, and also issue microloans to their network of people. Now, they have about 300 agents and about 17,000 customers in Ghana and Senegal already. They've done about 3,000 microloans, which it's small for a company like this, but it kind of sets the tone for how they can grow and go forward. And the most amazing thing is that they have a 0% default rate, which I would have to see the numbers backing this up, but it kind of makes sense. And the reason it does is because the agents, to become an Atlas agent, right, they have to pre-purchase credit. So they have to go and take $100 and get $100 in credit. And then if they have a smartphone, then they can go around and they essentially just exchange their credit for cash. So they go to someone's house, that person needs $20 in credit, so they just exchange it. He takes cash, and when he's exchanged all of his cash for all of his credit, then the agent goes back to what are called super agents, which could be a corporation, an individual who has access to a bank, or anyone really who can exchange larger amounts of money, and then they do another exchange, and it just keeps rotating over and over and over again. So the interesting thing about it is that they tried this with Bitcoin, and it failed. And there was one reason for that, and that is fees. The fees last year for Bitcoin became so high that they were not able to do these microtransactions. So it kind of says something about the use of Bitcoin where, yeah, it's great if you have a, 10,000 or 100,000 or $100 million, but what if you only have $10, right? And you want to be able to do peer-to-peer, trustless, permissionless transactions on a blockchain. There's definitely a huge need for this in the developing world. So the company has raised about $3.2 million in their equity rounds from Draper Associates, 1517 Fund, MITS Fund, and Partech Ventures, all well-known venture capital funds who I'm sure deeply believe in what the Access guys are doing and really want them to succeed. So here's where I really geeked out, because I read a lot of white papers, and so their governance model is incredibly good. Meta governance is unbelievably good. I've seen only a few other white papers which have taken the time and the effort to really sit down and figure out what is how can we build a decentralized system first, and then secondly, if our company goes under, what can we do to ensure that the governance of the token can still happen, and that we can be taken out of the picture, but then this can still work as an existing workable model for those who are using our services already. And so that's why when they created the token is going to switch out essentially between their credit and their token when they have the token generation event. So instead of buying credit, which the existing agents would do, now they would just go back and they would buy the token, and then they would switch the token for cash. There you go. The interesting part is what everything else does with the token. So there's a few parts. So there's the governance protocol, which can alter the on-chain components of the access network. This could be the incentive protocol or the polling module. The incentive protocol is a rewards mechanism for those who participate and contribute to the network. And then there's a polling module, which allows people to participate in the process of delegating, voting, and submitting polls to disperse the incentive pool. And it's really cool. So the governance protocol is essentially the base layer of what is allowed on the network. So it's kind of the rules of how everything works. So how is quorum met? How are disbursements issued? How is everything done in the network that needs to be necessary for this process to work? Now, to build a decentralized process for this, they've allowed it so the network can use their voting weight to come back and change these rules if they need to. Let's say they need to remove the operating company and bring in some more decentralized methods. It can be done. So it allows for greater movement of the platform if there needs to be. It's not locked in stone. It's a living, breathing protocol which people will be able to vote on, and there's some extremely well-designed reward mechanism or voting mechanisms to allow for this. Second part is the incentive protocol. This is a way for them to incentivize people to bring proposals, to vote, to essentially better the network. They'll be rewarded for it. And additionally, the voting module is interesting because it puts a lot of weight on verified users. So if you verify who you are, you go through a KYC process, your voting weight has about 5 times more weight than a person who would be anonymous. So it incentivizes people and protects against Sybil attacks, which would allow for a large number of people to cast votes anonymously and essentially take over the network. Additionally, if you can be political with your tokens. So let's say you don't want to take part in every vote. You can just find someone who you like a representative for you, how it would be in a normal political situation, and then just give them delegation authority for your tokens. So your token voting power is actually transitive. Super cool stuff. Now, the tokens themselves, there's going to be about 6 billion tokens, 27% sold in the token generation event, another 27% which are going to be locked in an incentive pool, which will be just dispersed for different things using the network, or if there's different partnerships, or just different ways to incentivize people on the network to keep on using it. So once those are actually released, that full incentive pool of 1.6 billion tokens, there's an inflation rate which will occur, and this will be somewhere between 0 to 1%, and that will occur for infinity. And this allows for the incentive pool to be continuously regenerated. But just like everything else in the platform, the meta governance allows for the token holders to choose the amount of inflation they want. So based on the staking weight of the votes, it could go anywhere between 0 to 1. And additionally, the founders are going to be vested over 2 years, which is cool. 25% tokens unlocked at the beginning, which they will use for something called a Guardian Advisory Council to essentially guide the the network in the way it should go. So yeah, really cool platform. I think it's going to do some cool stuff. It's actually a great use case. It's going to have huge social impact. I spoke with the founders. I spoke with Mickey the other day, and I spoke with James. Really smart guys. They've been working on this project for 3 years, I believe, almost. And spoke to them. They have a really good place where they're coming from. They really believe in bringing these financial services to the underbanked, and they actually have a really well thought out and planned and operational method to do it. So it ticks all my boxes. Great white paper, great governance. Team is extremely cool. Good backing, great advisors. They've got Joe from District OX, co-founder of District OX, who also hooked them up so they could have a partnership with Bloom, because they're going to be needing what is it? It's the risk protocol to be able to issue loans. Yes, risk validation. So, anyways, take a look at the website. Super cool. They're in their first round right now, first tier, but they will be doing more soon. Great project. Really love it. Love where they're going. So check it out. And yeah, if you like this, make sure to hit subscribe, like all the usual stuff, and we'll be back tomorrow.